and welcome back to IRL. This is Season 7 and we are live tonight here at the Chinese Grand Prix here at the Shanghai International Circuit on the central coast of China. It's 3.4 miles and 16 turns here with, as you may know, the best overtaking spot happening at turn 14 at the end of that long straight with DRS of course, but do be wary of turns 1, 3 and 5. We have seen some daring overtakes in that region in the past. The drivers out there are in for a new season of racing here in IRL. They're back to 50% race distance, so let's see how they do. Welcome one and all then to IRL. This is Season 7. This is round number 2. And welcome to the Chinese Grand Prix. It is myself, Jota, alongside you once again for this event. I am looking forward to being alongside you for this return in IRL to the Chinese Grand Prix. Big thank you to the co-commentators over at PSR for taking charge of last week's season opener. And what an absolute thriller it was indeed. But I'm pleased to be back alongside you for this event. We had a very, very intense qualifying. And in the end it was the race winner for last week at Bahrain. PSR Jan taking the victory of pole position. And he leads at the front in the Williams alongside his teammate Harris. Big apologies that we couldn't also bring you the very intense actually qualifying session. Unfortunately there was some technical issues over at the IRL Twitch, which means that we are now taking part on my personal YouTube channel, would you believe, JO21. Nice fit. Hopefully, if you are tuning in, you to be alongside me for this one. 17 drivers ready and raring to go here for the second round of this IRL Season 7 event. As the drivers towards the back, Slapbus in the Haas just making up the top 17 in 16th place. Just a little bit back behind Wexrow, but he will line up in the Haas. And we will get racing once again here in China in the wet. With all the intermediate tyres on, the drivers are lined up on the grid. And with those drivers lined up, we're counting down the lights. It's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, and it's 5 lights. It's 5 lights, and they are a go. The drivers, there they are, a couple of jump starters towards the midfield, but it is Jan leading the way from Haas, and then Harris, and then Lurch followed by Jacob with Moritz making an overtake for 4th place, but really good start for the Williams boys in 1st and 2nd place. Lurch holding on for P3, and Jacob in the Aston Martin, not a good start at all. He's losing positions left, right and centre. It's Piccolo gets into a spin with the Aston Martin. He was up 3, make it down 1, maybe down potentially some more actually here as he holds on for the position, and look how many people are piled up in that midfield. This is a massive crash towards the back involving Stonks. I believe that was the Alpine of NRM KVS who has just absolutely sideswiped him through there, which is not what you're really meant to do in racing, let's be perfectly honest. Bird trying to hold on the back of NRM, forced back here as Fern is trying to hold on, and the yellow flags waved in the 2nd sector. Do not know how Stonks is still in this race, I'll be perfectly honest with you, as NRM gets into another half spin and he's back onto the grass. You can't help but feel calmer, potentially might be the word in that particular event. And towards the midfield, Piccolo managing to hold on in the end to 8th place after that half spin with the Aston Martin, who I believe is actually all the way down in P17 now. Unfortunate stuff for him. The Alpha Tauri holding on to P7 as well, but Fern, what a start from him. The Mercedes up 8 positions as he tries to battle on and try and get as close as he can to Kai in the Red Bull in P5. But then trying to hold on if he can. Jan comes across the line to naturally take the fastest lap. Of course, a few people going off of the circuit. Obviously still trying to get used to the wet conditions out there at the moment. Then just trying to hold on around that outside line to keep it nice and steady indeed. As you can see, of course, it is wet out there at the moment. Intermediate tyres to be expected probably on until the end of this race. Lock up for Lurch in P4. battling happening towards that middle ground as well in P8 and P9 as the Alpha Tauri of Alessin and Wexro getting into the mix. Wexro going for that dive down into P9. Wexro holding on. Very well held control there from Wexro, managing to hold on just in the nick of time to P8. And of course no DRS available as it stands at the moment. Wet conditions, of course, meaning that it is going to be a little bit tricky to have the DRS open as it stands at the moment. Moritz holding on to P3 at the moment, but the two Williams boys still holding on their own at the moment. Doing a cracking job actually as well. Obviously it was a very, very intense Grand Prix in Bahrain last week. Jan managing to get the win, but his teammate nowhere to be found. He was down in P7. Currently Williams holding on to a 1-2 at the moment, 25-18 respectively. As it stands, they are in prime position to take a cracking 1-2 for Williams at the moment. Lurch getting a little bit of a slide on going through turn 4 as he tries to keep within range. Not so bad at the moment then for the drivers now. Things have started to settle down a little bit, but Slat Bus down in P10, looking to close down the gap a little bit on Alessin at the moment. 0.3 of a second now. She's doing a cracking job as it stands to stay within touching distance as well. Of course, these cars having to, well, it'll be the last time that we see these cars with the current force of downforce, because of course the air over the cars go over the car instead of underneath the car, as this the new current generation of F1 cars do. So this will be the last time that we see this generation, and all that dirty air will not be a problem. And I'm looking forward to see what the Chinese Grand Prix can effectively bring with closer racing indeed. But Slat Bus wanted to get close to Alessin, but even with the overtake, he's not in clear sight. He gets a double lockup going into the corner, so elects not to go for the big dive, does the number 23, as Moritz gets a time penalty. He's the first guilty party of track extension. Kai getting the fastest lap at the moment in the Red Bull P5. He is really closing down the gap at the moment on Lurch. He is struggling out there. We did see a few issues with him, but Kai holding his own. Of course, intermediate tyres at the moment for these drivers who are all just having to adjust to conditions. It was actually a completely dry qualifying for these guys, so have to very quickly adjust it to the new sort of setup. Especially if they were using a dry setup as well, it would be a little bit worrying for some of these drivers. Maybe the reason why some of these drivers were struggling, such as what happened to the Alpine of NRM. He ended up absolutely sideswiping the Alfa Romeo out of existence, like he just wasn't there. And currently at the moment he's actually trying to battle with TTM Sam at the moment in the McLaren. The Alpine really struggling to get any sort of ground at the moment on those tyres. In fact, he's lifting off very high through those corners at the moment. We have a spinning car, and unfortunately it is the Aston Martin of Jacob once again. Wrong place, wrong time for the Aston Martin. He's struggling out there, and he's 13 seconds back on Stonk, so himself is 30 seconds back from NRM. So Jan almost getting into a little bit of a close proximity to Jacob already. Jacob just now heading through into the second sector as Jan and Harris just about to start the first. So Jacob at serious risk of being lapped already here. Very wide for Lurch, and he gets a time penalty for his troubles. That's coming out of turn 16. But at the moment, Lurch just playing the waiting game now. As a bunch of drivers, I think, have started to do so, because as you can see, the rain is starting to ever so slightly lighten up a little bit. only going to help the drivers indeed, as we just close down on Harris here, who is still in touching distance with his teammates. Kai gets a time penalty. In fact, he's all the way down in P8. I'm wondering if he's had a bit of a half spin there. Invites Fern up to 5th place alongside his teammate Lurch. Piccolo in 6th, Wexro up in 7th. Good start from him, actually. 10 positions gained already in just the 5 laps. And of course, these drivers all getting used back to, well, getting back used rather, to the 50% race distance. Of course, last season we did the 225% races, and a very successful pilot it was. The drivers all electing to go back to 50% to round off this game cycle. Back on board again with Harris. Slowly but surely closing down the gap on Jan, actually, in fairness, but he isn't really pushing that much, as Kai has lost it, and he's lost it. Going through turn 13, put it on the grass, put it in the wall, and the full safety car has been launched as a result. That brings Stonks and Jacob right back into the game, as does that Sam as well. Jan elects to stay out, but as you can see, the rain has stopped falling, so I'm wondering now if the drivers are all going to elect to go onto a dry tyre here. A cracking opportunity it would be indeed. Now, you'd have to argue that the intermediate tyre is definitely the better tyre to be on at the moment, but if you've got a free pit stop with the track drying up quite quickly by the looks of things, it might be an option to go onto the dry tyre. We'll see what the Williams does, and he is going onto the dry tyre. It's a medium set. Sticking on a set of yellows, and he leaves the pits in P5 at the moment, and that is a complete breach of the white line limits as he spins his wheels on the back. Because of course there's still wet conditions, and to have a set of hard tyres on a track that's not just wet but also very cold may mean that Haas is going to be in a little bit of trouble here, especially as he tries to close down the gap, of course, to the front sitters here. And Jan is staying on that set of intermediate tyres. And he is getting a little bit of spray kicked up in by the safety car, but you'd have to argue it's not that much, and you'd think that the dry tyres surely are going to be the tyres to be on probably within the next 3 to 4 laps at racing distance, never mind behind the safety car. So maybe, just maybe, those who haven't pitted are going to choose to pit and just take the L on the amount of time that they're going to lose to those who have pitted already. And there's another 5-second penalty for crossing the pit lane exit white line. People struggle to spin their wheels, because of course the tyres are going to be very cold the moment that they even touch the ground. Maybe some aquaplaning as well. We'll see what they do then. Intermediate tyre runners still going to stay out, or are they going to pit? A few drivers still struggling out there at the moment. The Williams runner just now approaching turn 14, so it would be an unfortunate situation for those drivers, because they are going to lose time, but Jan does choose to pit. Lurch and Fern doing exactly the same thing. No surprise, Wexro's also in as well. So it'll be Jan's teammate Harris that takes the lead of this race. Made the good call. Perhaps Williams electing to split the strategy to see what is the best call here. Or perhaps they'd rather not double stack. We'll see. Medium tyres going on. I think double stacking that have lost a lot less time than the strategy that they've currently picked. Either way, Jan is going to come out, and thankfully for him, because all the other drivers behind him all did the same thing, he's only lost the one position to Moritz, and Moritz is on a hard tyre. Lap 7 of 28 then, 21 laps to go in this IRL Season 7 round number 2 here at the Chinese Grand Prix. All the drivers then just getting themselves ready to get behind the safety car, and of course the conditions out there are, well, unusual. All the drivers electing then to go onto that dry tyre. The conditions out there suggest maybe the intermediate is still the best tyre to be on, but you can't blame them for wanting to go onto the dry tyre, even if the dry tyre is not the best tyre to be on maybe for another few laps after the safety car here. Safety car is going to be out for at least another lap after this one. And I expect the safety car, regardless of where all the other drivers are on the field, will be coming in. But medium tyres on for Harris. He thinks he can go 20 laps to the end here. Moritz didn't want to push it, nor did Piccolo. Fern, TD and Slapbus also doing the same thing. Jacob, though, going on to a set of soft tyres, so he's definitely going to be double stopping. Obviously wants to try and get the jump on those on the medium tyre, and actually the best tyre to be on in these conditions, despite the fact it's not the best conditions for dry tyres. Being on the softs, they're easier to warm up. Have a look at the spray at the moment. It's not kicking up too much spray here. Obviously, he isn't going too quickly. We'll see what happens anyway. Jacob comes around turn 4. Yeah, not too much spray being picked up here. I'd have to argue here that maybe it's time for dry tyres imminently. And I say that we've actually got a spinning car under the safety car. It's PSR Troy. He's spun it under the mediums. We'll see what the kick-up is on the front tyres. And there is a little bit of pick-up. And unfortunately for the likes of Stonks, Jacob, Troy, I think probably NRM, they're all going to be, I think, perhaps a little bit too far back to catch up to the safety car queue here. NRM might be okay. Now thinking about it, but it's going to be a serious push for Troy, Stonks and Jacob. So 20 laps to go in this race then. We are behind the safety car here for IRL Season 7 round number 2. And Moritz, second place man on the hard tyres, he doesn't think he's going to be able to get to the end, but how is his warm-up going to be? He is trying to put a bit of warm-up on, but in that second sector you can certainly see there's quite a bit of standing water. That will only benefit those on the softer compound of tyre. Good catch from Moritz. He's going to have to be very wary of that one. He's almost losing it in and around the corner at slow speed. It's going to be very difficult at higher speeds here. And of course the driver know-how for when a safety car is coming in is to try and minimise the amount of time that you give to someone on the straight. So I expect Harris is going to go quite late here, which is only going to give the likes of NRM enough time to catch up. He's just about caught up here, and he's actually in a bit of a prime position here, because surely his tyres are going to be the warmest. Sorry for Troy, Stonks or Jacob, though. They're not going to make it. So Harris, no doubt, is going to leave it to the very last minute if he can. We'll have to see. As the safety car just entering into the pit lane right now, so they'll have the control of the throttle. Whenever they want to go, they will have the ability to do so. Of course, the drivers know how of when the DRS is enabled, is when the dry tyres are usually the quickest tyre to be on in semi-wet conditions. We haven't had the call yet, because of course we're under safety car, and Harris has gone early, and he's caught Moritz out just a tiny little bit. Already pulled the 1 second gap. He needs to stay out of DRS, but we do go green again here in China. And we've already got a spinning car at the back. In fact, no, we don't have a spinning car. We have a car entering in the pit lane. Fern is choosing to come in, as we do have a half-spinning car towards the back. I believe that was Troy. Piccolo and Wexro getting into a little fight here. The hard tyres obviously are not going to switch on just yet. And all of the drivers will be constantly in negotiations with their onboard AI race engineer, Jeff, to figure out what the best tyre is to be on so they know when to push. So, of course, the typical point, as that's a very late call to go for the move into turn 5 there on a hard tyre. But TD might have just made it work, you know, and makes a double overtake, and it goes around the outside as Piccolo is caught out by 2 Alpha Tauris and potentially his teammate as well. He is really struggling out there on those hard tyres. It's the Haas on the hard tyres are actually doing quite well, though. Really struggling out there, obviously not maximising tyre warmth on that lap as NRM makes the overtake. He's now up to 11th on mediums, as Fern has elected to go back onto the intermediate tyre. not time for dries, and he doesn't think it's going to be time for dries anytime soon, and that is not a bad call in fairness. It's not warm out there. So perhaps evaporation of the circuit is not going to be high, which is only going to leave standing water around for a lot longer, and Lurch is trying to warm up the tyres. Late on the brakes from Wexrow. And he might get the double overtake as well going into turn 14. It was a hot spot. We did say it was going to be. And Wexrow going around that outside line. Is he going to make the double overtake work? The Haas may have to give up the position, and he does so. And Moritz surely is not going to be fighting for P3. He's going to be fighting for P5 here because Lurch is looking very quick. But chooses not to go too deep into this corner. Is he going to go around the outside potentially to have the inside of turn 3, or is he going to switch back to have the outside? He's going to tuck in behind. Very close, almost practically pushing him around the corner. The hard tyres seriously causing Moritz some problems here, but he's going for the long-term game, of course. Late on the brakes for Lurch around the outside line, but Moritz has got that one covered, no problem at all. TD also looking pretty racy here. He wants to get into this position here for a battle for P4. And of course, the drivers in front have all got penalties as well, so he doesn't have to push too hard. Otherwise, he's going to nearly spin, as he nearly does there, actually. And we have a car retiring in the pit lane. Troy, we've lost the Ferrari. Question is how is the intermediate tyre runner is doing? Well, he's 6.3 behind Piccolo at the moment. We'll keep an eye out on how his tyre performance is and how his race performance is. He's 6.1 through the corner as we lose Jacob in the pit lane as well. And Fernie's actually gaining at the moment. I'm wondering if the intermediate tyre is the better tyre to be on, but are these drivers brave enough to make that call? We'll have to see. Lurch is going to go for the dive bomb, surely, and that's exactly what the Mercedes is going to do down that inside line into 14. And the Haas runner's not going to have the grip on that outside. It is damp out there, and there goes the Mercedes. A DRS is enabled, which is usually the call now, that the dry tyres are the better tyre to be on. But I think it's a very, very slow transition at the moment, that maybe the intermediate tyre has got the better warm-up, and you'd think maybe the intermediate tyre is still going to be the quicker tyre for the next couple of laps. But Fern has made a bad call by the looks of things for the long-term gain, as he's now 3.7 behind Piccolo. Plenty of standing water out there at the moment, as you can see. It looks very damp. And he'll hug it round the inside, Will Harris, as he tries to hold on for P1 at the moment. His teammate Jan elected to stay out on the intermediate tyre for one lap. Cost him that lead of the race. He's trying to race with Wexrow at the moment, who's really mounting the curb. You don't want to do that on this game. Very bold call. Moritz, though, fair play to him. He stayed within the DRS territory of Lurch, and he's going to have to hope he gets a good couple of corners here, because if he can, he might be able to challenge here for Mercedes. We'll see. Very excellent, very, very good, actually, corner going out of turn 12 into 13. And he's just on the brink, but I believe the Haas driver will have DRS. He pumps it into overtake, and he is going to put pressure on the Mercedes, you think. DRS then open. He's a little bit too far back on this occasion, but he could potentially go for the move into one. We'll have to see. Late on the brakes, you'd expect. Double lock-up because the conditions are cold, but he does make the apex. Big slide, though, going out of the outside as Harris sets the fastest lap of this race on the medium tyre. Fern now losing buckets of time on the intermediate. The dry tyres are the tyres now to be on. It was a bad call from that Mercedes to come in. Bad strategy, and it's cost him dearly. The question is now, are those who have picked the medium tyre, are they going to make those tyres last? This is one of the circuits with the highest degradation on tyre life. As you can see, the red blinking light at the back of that Ferrari of Wexrow, not because it's a rain light, but because he is really struggling with DRS at the moment. And he might be in the DRS of PSR Jan at the moment, but is he going to have the energy or actually have the audacity to get anywhere near him? He's just half spun and he's back off of the circuit. Now Lurch is going to try and close down that gap. It was 3.7. Now make that 2.0. dirty air effect was just priming Wexrow into a bit of a horrid situation, and he holds it quite well as Torley is now the next person to try and close down the gap and overtake Moritz on the hard tyre. Nearly halfway there in this race. Moritz will not have DRS on Lurch this time, which means he's going to have to defend this all on his own. Fern, 3-second time penalty, multiple warnings. With the DRS open, he's not even using overtake. Is the AlphaTauri, the Honda power unit in the back of that car makes a very, very easy move on the Ferrari power unit of the Haas, now into P6. Meanwhile, the Mercedes power unit in the back of the McLaren Mercedes is open to make a move. Moritz will have DRS on Torley. Unlikely he's going to make a move here, surely. It's a good exit, though, out of 16. Torley getting fastest lap of the race as well. Said we're nearly halfway into this race then. Indications still suggesting the Williams are the drivers to keep an eye on. Jan will still lead the championship at the end of this. And that right-hander. Oh, it's a big tank slapper from Moritz. He holds it well, but he was trying to put the power down because he knows he's under pressure from Sam here. But that mistake has put him out of DRS of Torley, and there's still spray being kicked up in that second sector. But Moritz is looking like a little bit of a sitting duck at the moment, and these hard tyres have just not switched on. But it is the long-term gain here for the Haas. He wants to go to the end of this race. The medium tyre runners might need to pit again. The question is, will they make enough of a distance on Moritz to be able to make the overtake work if they do have to pit? We do have an overtake for third place. Wexrow now making the move. Sam getting close, chooses not to go for the overtake into turn 14, but very late on the brakes, but still again making the apex despite the lockup. Harris then setting the fastest lap of this race of Wexrow. Get a 3-second time penalty for his trouble, and Torley setting the fastest lap of this race. Is mega quick at the moment, is that AlphaTauri, and he might actually be putting Wexrow and Lurch under some pressure here, is that AlphaTauri. Last time, of course, we'll be seeing Honda in IRL in the official season, because, of course, Honda and their power unit being taken over by RBPT. Keeping it nice and steady then is Torley as he gets the fastest lap of the race once again. And as I said, he having that fastest lap of the race is going to be flying high at the moment, actually, because he's got a lot of grip on that front end as well. Wondering if he's actually set his car up for these conditions that are best described as a little bit manky, as they say up north in England. And 14 and 28 then coming around right-hander. It might be a bit humid out there as well, actually, because the track still looks damp, but you can see the dry line a bit now finally beginning to form. Is Torley going to go look for the overtake? Wexrow still within DRS of Lurch at the moment, so he could use that to defend from Torley, as Torley very late on the brakes, front right lock up, hits his apex, in fact actually gets his apex a little bit early, does the AlphaTauri. Harris setting another fastest lap. We'd expect Torley, with his pace at the moment, might be looking for a faster lap. Jan 37.553. Torley will come across the line, and he will get a lap time that is not faster, 37.562. Wexrow elects not to fight him. Makes it P4 for him, but he's very late, actually, going into turn 1, and actually spits himself out wide, does PSR Torley. And Lurch actually getting a very good exit to turn 4. Does set a purple sector 1, but I believe that would be the Ferrari of Wexrow actually going that little bit faster. The AlphaTauri maybe still be under a little bit of pressure here from Wexrow. He's actually doing quite well. A little bit of a harsh entry into there. He's going to put a bit of strain on his tyres. Fern fastest lap, 37.520. Torley actually out of the DRS territory of Lurch here, so he's actually under a little bit of pressure. No, we just managed to get DRS actually. Very, very good turn 13. So Torley just managing to get DRS, and I think he's aware that he might struggle here with Lurch. Issue for him, however, is the last couple of laps he's been pushing, and he's actually down on ERS power, which might actually make him a little bit vulnerable to attack from Wexrow. But Wexrow currently struggling to keep the gap here, so he has to go late on the brakes. He's got the opportunity to, and he elects to do so. Harris fastest lap. These lap times are going to keep tumbling, of course, as the conditions get that little bit drier. Lurch then taking turn 16, and he's still well in front of Torley, who now gets the fastest lap himself. 36.128 for the AlphaTauri. Expecting drivers towards the back should be improving, and likes of PSR Fern, of course, on the fresh medium tyre, who could actually go to the end of this race here. So it's not all doom and gloom here for the Mercedes if you think about it on strategy. It's just got to hope that, of course, the drivers towards the front have to make a pit stop. We lose a driver. It's a Red Bull who spun it at turn 2, but he's back up and running. I believe that would have been TD, who's now battling with the Haas of Slapbus in P11. His charge has stalled a little bit, as Torley's, and I believe he's now beginning a little bit on ERS recharge here. Third fastest lap, 35.878. The number 8 AlphaTauri beginning an ERS save, but he is using just a little bit to get closer and closer to begin another charge here against Lurch. The gap now 3/4 of a second, or just a little bit over. Lurch getting a little bit of a wiggle on through 13. And very wide actually from the AlphaTauri. Might put him under some pressure. We'll have the DRS though. There goes the flap. No pressure really for Lurch at the moment. Very late on the brakes for Wexrow, but he completely misses his apex this time. Harris fastest lap, followed by Jan. See how Lurch and Torley do. Torley getting a warning for that particular excursion. 35.6 for the AlphaTauri. And Lurch now beginning a little bit of an ERS recharge himself here. The red blinking light at the back obviously now no longer on because it's no longer a rain light. So you just have to keep a very firm eye on that light, and if you see it flashing on the straight, you know they're trying to harvest energy here. As Lurch goes into the corner, you can see the red light blinking ever so slightly in the distance. But Wexrow is starting to begin a little bit of a charge against Torley here. Fastest first sector of anyone so far for Wexrow. Hey Ian Buck in the chat. Nice to have you join us here on I was about to say the IRL YouTube channel, but it's mine, isn't it? Harris is flying high at the moment, 4.4 seconds. He actually made the strategy work under the safety car. His teammate was leading at the time, but chose to stay out. So whether it was a decision between the two PSR drivers at PSR Williams, whether Jan just said, no, I think the intermediates are still going to be the tyre of choice. We'll have to see. In fairness, Fern took the gamble to go back onto a set of intermediates at the end of the safety car period, and it would have worked for a couple of laps if it weren't for the fact the track had completely dried out, as Moritz is hemorrhaging another position. Sam takes P6. Very late then to returning back to the racing line, though. Moritz could have been caught out, but in fairness, he kept it steady. Jan fastest lap, 35.043. Harris not going faster on that last lap. Maybe he's on a little bit of a safety buffer now, we'll have to say. 8/10 slower was Moritz on that one. Still putting Sam under pressure here. And he could go for that little gap down the inside line. He has opened it up as Sam. Sam will re-shut the door. And Moritz, if he can get the power down early enough without spinning out, might put Sam under some pressure into turn 5. He might be close enough. But it's going to be a bit of a late lunge if he goes for it. And no surprise, chooses not to go for it. And Sam, I think, was anticipating maybe a dive. Misses his apexes ever so slightly through 5. Fern, 35.0, and that is the risk of going on the curbs. Fair play to Wexrow for catching it. But you don't want to go on that curb around there, because if you hit it just right, it will spit the car out in the other direction. Ten laps to go in this race, then Harris still leading the race, but Jan is closing down the gap. He's gained about 3/10 on that last lap. Torley was on a little bit of a charge the last couple of laps, but he stalled a little bit. He uses DRS, but you can see he's not really using ERS here, so I'm wondering if he's on a little bit of a charge. Later on the brakes, little lock-up, but hits his apex absolutely perfectly. Harris then fastest lap, 34.7. Jan going faster with a 34.7, but stays within the 10th. Lurches out, rather, and Torley now with a 3-second time penalty. So it's all fair play again now for third place. And Sam has a shot at getting third place just by the merit of not having a penalty here, and I'm wondering if Torley getting that time penalty means he's going to start picking up his A game here, or are the medium tyres beginning to switch off? They could be switching off soon, you know. It would be around about 14-ish lap old tyres when they start to become a little bit degraded to the point where they might not be raceable. And that's only going to help the likes of Firm. The only issue is he's 22.5 seconds back from Piccolo, as the hard tyre runners are just hemorrhaging time all over. But fair play to Moritz, though. He's still holding on. Actually starting to gain a little bit on Sam. Is that the sign here that the hard tyres are beginning to switch back on here, and the likes of TD, Slapbus and Piccolo are going to start gaining on the medium tyre runners? This was the risk of going on the medium. Harris is still losing time to his teammates at the moment. Jan gaining another 0.3 on that last lap. Of course, if you're just tuning in, this is IRL Season 7. It's round number 2 here at the Chinese Grand Prix at the Shanghai International Circuit. We're on the central coast of China for this race, and it has been raining. And we have had a safety car, but the drivers all electing to go to dry tyres early on. And as you can see, the conditions are only improving with every lap. Jan, fastest lap, 1:34.619, going faster than his teammate by a couple of tenths again. Gap now down to 3.7 as Moritz is really starting to pile some pressure now onto Sam. And this is now a bit of a turning point in this race here. Are the hard tyres now beginning to switch on here for the drivers as the medium tyres wear thin? This is a very high degradation circuit, so the medium tyres are only expected to last around about 13 or 14 laps. When you include the safety car period, they should only last around about 11 laps of racing at 50% race distance. Hits the curb, going to go for the later on the brake move, because he can do, because he's going to hit that apex ever so nicely, and another couple of tenths now gained on Sam. So Moritz starting to feel the effects of being on that hard tyre here, as we have someone pitting, and it is Fern pitting again, and I'm wondering if he's going to retire from this race. We'll have to see, and he does exactly that as he chooses. Maybe the intermediate stint I had after the safety car was not the best call. He's out in P14. Torley now was on a charge earlier on, and he's gained all of that ERS back here. He's looking for a potential bit of pressure on Lurch, but Lurch, in fairness, has been holding his own. But Moritz is going to slowly but surely breathe down the neck of the drivers in front here. And if he can overtake Sam and then gain a second on those in front, he could still take P3 on penalties. Assuming, of course, penalties all fall in Moritz's favour. Unfortunately for him, he does have one penalty on his head at the moment. We'll take a look at that penalty situation actually. There it is, everyone on 3 seconds who does have a penalty. So Moritz would have to be fighting with those in front, but unfortunately has got a McLaren Mercedes in the way. And Torley now starting to feel some pressure here. Wexrow able to close down the gap once again. 3.5 tenths separating him. And in fairness to Wexrow, a little bit of a second wind starting to kick in for his medium tyres, because he's still within 1/10. In fact, he's actually only 38 hundredths of a second slower than his fastest lap. Got to be careful though on those curbs, that will spit the car out if you hit them wrong. We have lost a driver, and that's a McLaren Mercedes, a Sam. The Papaya Pirates, he has lost the car. Another familiar corner. Heading through turn 9, and it's just not the place to be when you're on aged tyres. Moritz now able to hold on. He's in P6 at the moment. Has he lost the car as a bit of collision? Doesn't look like there's any damage to that Haas. And the battle towards that third place run here, as the track is starting to warm up and the sun has finally come out in China. And heading through that final corner, Lurch lurching out. Totally staying within the track limits. Lurch probably at risk of another time penalty here as well. And he is really struggling with ERS as well as that Mercedes. You can see the red light blinking. And have a look at that steering wheel. And you don't need to be an F1 magician or someone who knows F1 to know that bar is very, very close to empty. And Lurch is leaving himself very vulnerable to an attack towards the end of this race here. From the likes of Torley, maybe even Wexro as well, if he is storing up his ERS, and he is, you know. Lurch has to start doing a little bit of lifting and coasting if he wants to hold on to P3 here, because he is going to be a sitting duck towards the end of this race here. Keep it steady. Don't mount the curbs too much. And you're going to be absolutely fine. Moritz, however, still losing time to those on the medium tyre. He needs to be a little bit closer if he wants to try and get an attack in, but all the hard tyres switching on a little bit too late here. Mistake from Torley. Turn 12, turn 13 taking a lot of curb and nearly out of DRS territory of Lurch. He will have it. I've got no doubt he's going to use some of that stored ERS to try and gain the time back that he lost on Lurch. And in fairness, Lurch hasn't got a lot of ERS left here, so he might not need to use too much. Will Torley to get back into the position he was. Later on the brakes, store that energy up. Lurch has missed his apex completely and he's off of the circuit here, and he's going to leave himself very vulnerable to an attack into turn 1 here. We'll see what Torley does then. Going into turn 15, turn 16, and then up on the curb. Lurch getting a good jump out of that final corner, but just ever so slightly Lurch able to hold on. Very disappointing indeed from Torley. Could have capitalised on that mistake from Lurch. With 5 laps to go, anything can happen, and it usually does. Gap to Harris and Jan, about 2.9 seconds. The two Williams boys looking to continue on to take a 1-2 for Williams at the moment. Jan is still pushing on Harris and putting pressure on him. But Harris actually able to just hold on with his current pace, but that one mistake and it could flip back in the other direction. They're just currently heading around turn 13 at the moment, are the two Williams. And 8 seconds back, going into turn 12, is the Mercedes, the AlphaTauri, and the Ferrari. These guys have actually been following for a while. They've been following each other for a long time now, have these drivers. But again, Lurch not able to save up the ERS he wants here, and the Ferrari and the AlphaTauri just keep waiting, and they will be there, ready to make a pretty hard prime attack here. Towards the end of this race, you'd expect probably going to be an overtake into this corner on the 28th lap, 5 laps in. It will give us an opportunity to have a look then at those clips right at the start of the race. There are a lot of incidents that I'm sure the stewards are going to have to pick up on. While they're battling, we still actually have this little battle brewing here as well between NRM, Alassin and maybe Sam as well. Of course, he spun out around about turn 8, turn 9 did the McLaren Mercedes, and the Alpine Renault and the other AlphaTauri Honda looking to try and get close. There's a lot of curb there actually from Alassin. It's not going to work. Second time pass for multiple warnings for Slap Bus. He's on soft tyres actually, as is Stonks for that matter. They were, I believe, on medium tyres were them drivers, so it's a completely mistake, and either way they don't believe those medium tyres were going to last here. They've got 4 laps to go, and these medium tyres are going to be screaming surely at some point. And back towards that battle for P3. Still trying to close that gap down for Wexro at the moment, but Torley is looking more likely to be taking P3 out of Lurch's hands here. He gets very late on the brakes, but they both hit their apexes respectively. If anything, Torley actually hit his a bit earlier, so he could lose a little bit of time out the corner. Heading then into turn 16. And then with the DRS open, of course, Torley going to keep applying the pressure onto Lurch, but he has been using a little bit more ERS on this last few laps. Looks like he's trying to put a bit of mental pressure now onto the Shizou driver. But Paradox are looking here to try and take the Lurch Shizou's driver here and potentially make it a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here as it stands. If everything goes pretty horrific for the Mercedes, it could end up being a Paradox 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this race here. Opening up the belt for some potential more competition here. FRA in the mix. Shizou got a couple of drivers in there, of course, with Piccolo in the academy, Lurch in the full-time seat. Another best lap then from Torley. Loses a bit more time to Lurch. Towards that middle ground as well. NRM and Allison trying to get closer here to Sam, but I'm wondering if the DRS train is beginning to form a little bit here between these three runners. NRM actually closes the DRS early. Again, going to keep applying pressure on Sam. He knows he doesn't have to overtake him as long as he makes the move on the 28th lap. The P7 all his. Though, of course, he did get involved in that pretty horrific incident with the Alfa Romeo of TTM Stonks, which may mean he may end up getting a time penalty. It's obviously all down to the stewards. I'm simply just the humble, shouty man at the back of the microphone. What do I know? Lap 26 of 28. Torley and Wexro now beginning to put a little bit of pressure now on the Mercedes of Lurch. But again, Shizou teaching their drivers well to keep you cool. I haven't actually seen a mistake here from Lurch apart, maybe from the 3-second time, but that was a bit of a Murrayism, wasn't it? I haven't seen any mistakes apart from the one that he did. Heading then into turns 13. A long right-hander. Again, not actually, despite the fact he's been putting a bit of pressure on, Torley has not had a good 26th lap here. And the gap at the front starting to really close down now. Gap 1.6 as well. So Harris's race win might still not be fully decided here. Lock up on the front right. Stonks with the time penalty. Lurch again, lurching out wide. And with the DRS open, is Torley going to make the move on the 27th lap? We'll have to see. He is going to go for it. Torley now in front. Is Lurch going to make a move down that inside line? He might not do, but Wexro is ready to take up positions if any mistakes are made here. Now the question is how quickly are these drivers going to adjust to the fact that one doesn't have dirty air anymore and the other one does. Torley looked like he was losing the rear ever so slightly because I think he was anticipating understeer that wasn't going to be there because of course his muscle memory all set him out there. To me it looked like Lurch pretty much gave that position up because he really could still get P3 here. Giving that position back to Torley means he technically actually now has the advantage, but can Torley pull enough of a gap on Lurch to actually make him more vulnerable to Wexro? Oh, and again Lurch, he's just trying to get used to the fact he's got understeer now, and on dirty tyres, old tyres, it's not going to help. Lurch is really struggling to adapt out there, and it's going to put him in some prime position here. Look at this, Moritz on the hard tyre. Starting to really pick up the pace here now, and he has a time penalty on his own accord, so has this become a little bit of a four-way fight potentially for the win? Or rather for P3. Lurch choosing not to go for the dive, but he is a little bit later on the brakes, but still hits. Absolutely, his markers bang on. And that battle towards the front is really starting to heat up as well. Harris has been holding on to this race since the safety car. He's now currently in a little bit of a scrap with a back marker in TTM Stonks at the moment. He really wants to get past him ASAP because he doesn't want to give him too much dirty air and put him under pressure, because Jan will be very happy to take the victory right out of his hands again. We'll have to see later on the brakes for Jan. And Jan is actually in the DRS territory, but he doesn't have ERS to his name at the moment. As you can see, that bar is pretty low as we have a slow car at the moment. I believe that is Slapbus. And Harris is in a prime position here himself. He's actually in a good spot because he's going to have DRS at the moment on the TTM Stonks. If he can get close enough, this is quite close actually. I'm wondering if he's actually going to get it here. I think he might not do. I think he might have just missed it here. So he is actually vulnerable to an attack from his teammate on the final lap, and this will be absolutely horrific for PSR Harris if he loses this here. Using the ERS he's got left though for Jan, but he's got absolutely 0 ERS left here. DRS is going to overtake TTM Stonks, but I don't think he's going to get anywhere near his teammate. Going into 14, he hasn't got any ERS left. Very late on the brakes, but fair play, manages to hit his marker. But it's looking very close indeed as Lurch is trying to make the move potentially for P3. Going around the outside line. It's going to be close indeed as Jan and Harris come across the line. Harris wins the race, but we've still got this battle for P3 here. As Lurch is going down that inside line, it's going to be mightily close. Switch back, and Lurch holds on to P3 in the end after all of that. Moritz gets P4 on the line on those hard tyres. He's going to be absolutely ecstatic that he managed to get P4 in the end. And Torley, who managed to hold on to P4 for all of that time, is relegated to P5. Wexrow is 6th. Sam with the half spin finishes in 7th. And my friends, that was a very close battle all the way to the end at China. China always brings good racing on equal cars. I can't wait to see what the circuit brings with the new generation of cars going into the next season. Not just of IRL, but of course of the real Formula 1 season. But we take a moment to celebrate Harris on the top step of the podium for Williams. It is a Williams 1-2, would have thought I'd say that, as he takes the victory here in China tonight. Cracking win indeed then for Harris, and the Estonian of Jan taking second place. And in the end, a very, very good third place for Shazoo, getting Lurch to the final step of the podium on the final lap. Of course, very good tactical play from the Mercedes. And in the end, it looked very much likely the AlphaTauri was going to be taking P3, but in the end, he finishes P5. Because, of course, it is Moritz, the German in the Haas, taking a cracking P4 on the hard tyre as well on the final lap. In the end, then, it is Harris leading from Jan, then Lurch, Moritz, then Torley, Wexrow in 6th, Sam in 7th, Allison, the Netherlands driver, finishing in the AlphaTauri in 8th place, with NRM in 9th place. Very much preliminary, though, after that incident with TTM Stonks in the Alfa Romeo, and then TD123 in 10th place. Piccolo is in 11th, just outside of the points, unfortunately, by about 4 and a bit seconds. Slapbus finishing in 12th, with Stonks in 13th place out of those drivers that managed to finish, of course. That is it for the Chinese Grand Prix, and I hope to see you again next time for IRL for another race in Season 7.